Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to extract key insights from various sources, basically giving you a shortcut to getting really well informed on a topic.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into something quite profound, the nature of deep, lasting connections.
We'll be using some personal reflections and stories centered around someone named Nick Roth as our main material here.
That's right. Our goal, our mission, if you like, is to unpack what makes certain relationships feel so significant, so resilient, even across huge gaps in time or distance.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with Nick himself. The material describes him as having this natural alignment with things. It even says whatever he touches turns to gold. That's quite a statement.
It is, yeah. And it's not really about literal gold or just success. It seems to point towards a deeper kind of resonance, a harmony with energy flow.
Right. And the source uses his surfing as a prime example.
Exactly. It wasn't presented as just a skill he learned or a sport. It felt more like, like destiny, an inherent connection to the ocean, to its rhythm.
So less about winning contests or getting famous.
Much less. The material really contrasts that external stuff, fame, fortune, with Nick's internal drive. Surfing was, and I think this is a direct quote, a fundamental expression of his being.
Like art, a
Yeah.
collaboration with the wave itself.
Perfectly put. It was about that pure experience, that intrinsic motivation. His fulfillment came from doing it, from that alignment.
And there's mention of his quiet smile.
Yes, suggesting he understood something deeper, maybe. A kind of truth found in that effortless flow, that balance. It hints that maybe real connection happens when we're just genuinely ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense. It ties into how others might perceive someone like that, even if they can't quite put their finger on it.
Uh-huh.
Which brings us to this interesting story about his father. He apparently called you Electric Man and said your voice was like an electric computer. That's different.
It is, yeah, definitely a unique nickname. And the material acknowledges it might sound, well, a bit odd.
But there's an interpretation offered, right? About the subconscious mind.
Yes. The idea being that sometimes our subconscious picks up on subtle energies, frequencies maybe, that our conscious mind just doesn't register.
Okay.
So the thinking is his father was perhaps sensing something about your, let's call it, unique energetic signature, your way of interacting with the world, maybe patterns others didn't see consciously.
And he used the words, he had electric computer to try and grasp it. So by energetic signature, we're talking about like your fundamental vibe, how you show up.
Pretty much, yeah. Your underlying way of being, which can apparently be perceived, even if vaguely. It was like a confirmation, in a way, that your own spark, let's say, was noticeable.
Interesting. It suggests these connections might operate on levels we don't fully understand, on these sort of compatible energies.
He definitely hints at that possibility.
Okay, so let's jump forward, a long time forward. Nick moves Orange County up to Depot Bay in Oregon. Big move.
Significant distance.
And it had been, what, over 30 years since you'd last had contact?
That's right, yeah, 3 decades.
But the material says when you reconnected, the feeling was that time is endless. That's powerful.
It really is. And this gets into ideas about, well, nonlinear reality. It's not always just A leads to B leads to C.
You mean like time isn't just a straight line? The source mentioned Russell in relation to this.
Yeah, thinkers like Bertrand Russell explored how our perception of time isn't always linear. And with deep connections, that feeling can be really strong. It's like the intensity of the shared bond creates its own kind of closeness, regardless of the calendar years.
So the initial connection, that shared energy, it created something that just kept flowing, maybe under the surface.
Kind of like an underground river, yeah. So when you meet again, you tap right back into that flow, and the time apart feels less relevant.
That brings us to Zoran's analogy mentioned in the text.
Right, the one about friendships being like rivers meeting the sea.
Yeah. Their waters mingle forever, even if the surface currents diverge.
It's a great image, isn't it? Your day-to-day lives, the surface currents went different ways, but that deeper mingling, that shared essence, it just endured.
Okay, so pulling these threads together, Nick's natural connection, his father's intuition, this feeling of timelessness. What's the big picture here about why this connection felt so significant?
Well, it suggests a really profound bond. The material calls Nick a significant thread, even a strong knot in the web of your life. It points to that recurring pattern of shared energy, mutual influence woven through your lives, even when separated. It really shows how connections built on, shared joy and being authentic, they seem to last longer than ones based on just circumstances.
So the main takeaway isn't about needing constant contact or proximity.
Not necessarily, no. It seems to be more about that lasting resonance, that enduring vibration of shared sparks, as the text puts it.
Right. Which leads nicely into this reflection exercise the material suggests. It's called Dragon Trial, the timeless connection.
Yes, this is something for you listening to try.
Take a moment. Think of someone from your past, someone you had a really significant connection with, but maybe haven't seen or spoken to in years, even decades.
Really try to bring their image to mind, and more importantly, the feeling of that connection.
Yeah, sense the energy of that bond. Does it feel diminished by all the time that's passed?
Or does it feel more like a quiet current that's actually still there, still vibrant in some way?
What might that feeling tell you about the real nature of that connection?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How can some relationships seem to just sidestep the clock?
Yeah, what allows them to feel like they exist outside of linear time?
And that's really what we've been exploring here, looking at the Nick Roth material. We've seen hints of innate resonance, perceptible energy, and this ability of deep bonds to kind of collapse time upon reunion.
So maybe a final thought for you to carry with you. Think about those sparks in your own life.
Which connections feel like they operate outside of time?
And what might that suggest about the fundamental nature of those really important relationships?
Something deep about shared human experience, perhaps.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.